So with Alonso off the table and Amorim firmly on it, what could Amorim bring to Liverpool? Of course, he is the sporting manager. He said that he can't promise that he's going to be at Sporting next season. There's a lot of rumours that he's already been offered a contract to be the manager, to be the replacement for Jurgen Klopp. We're going to have a little look at kind of how he plays and what it would bring, and maybe some of the personnel that he could bring over as well. Nubaid, as a Liverpool fan, how are you feeling? I mean, I would imagine you're upset about Klopp leaving, but how do you feel about the replacement and who that needs to be in terms of what they're going to bring to what will be a very difficult first season?
Well, we sort of sat here and I said, like, Alonso is the guy, because I'm so much so about psychology more than tactics, and I felt you had to get the guy in that would convince people. It's been a strange one because the sentiment from Liverpool fans, and the same for me, is like, I'm not sure on Amorim because he's an unknown quantity, essentially. Yeah. He's in the Portuguese league and he's doing very, very well. And he nurtures young players very well. Tactically, I think there's a few elements that we're going to talk about that Liverpool don't have currently that he's going to have to bring in. But his talent identification has been very good as well. And the best part is people are saying I look like him and he's a handsome fella. So we take those little wins. We take those little wins. But yeah, I think we're going to deep dive into it. But I think in terms of profile, I'm interested to know from your perspective whether I'm doing this from a I love Klopp standpoint, and there will never be one like Klopp ever again, whether Amorim fits into those shoes as a character.
I think it's a great thing to talk about, because from what I'm aware of, because I think obviously it's difficult for us in this country and it's only kind of what you read, but it does seem like he is emotionally very intelligent. And when you talk about Alonso and Amorim, I think the one thing I would say is that it feels like, and again, dangerous for me to say this, that especially with Alonso, what he just created, it's absolutely astounding. But it does feel like Amorim is a bit more available in terms of creating that connection and having that comfortability emotionally to connect with the Liverpool fans, which is such an important thing for any team. But I think it's one where you really want to see that when it's Liverpool, and especially after Klopp as well, because I think if you bring in a manager that is, let's say, Eric Ten Hag-y, it's just a bit closed off, isn't it? Like, forget the tactics side of it. Like, there's just not going to be that connection, right? It's going to short circuit a little bit. And I think for Liverpool, you've got that side of it. I actually think if you kind of, copy and paste the way that Alonso has set up and the players that he would want at Liverpool with the way that he's played at Bayer Leverkusen, and a similar thing with Amorim, this feels much better, in my opinion, in terms of the profiles that you've got there and how it would transfer. And I think the other thing to say when you're doing that, and a lot of people do that, I've done it on my own channel, the thing that you've got to be careful about is, managers can play in different ways. That said, Amorim generally only plays this 3-4-3, which is something that I do really think we see these trends time and again. And I think what's really interesting about football these days is that the trends are getting quicker and quicker in terms of how they're arriving. And I do think that three at the back that you've seen at Bayer Leverkusen and Sporting this season is something that is most likely going to be on its way. In terms of different areas of the pitch, one person that I think is really, really interesting if Amorim comes in is Trent, because the wide players in the 4 of the 3-4-3, it's a world that would work for Robertson and for Trent, but Trent would be staying wide.
He'd be David Beckham.
He would be David Beckham, yeah, exactly. Great, yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And because essentially, they are wing backs, and I think with that, because the width comes from those two. So, how do you feel about Trent in terms of him at the age he is now, vice captain, will be, well, I guess if you're a Liverpool fan, you're hoping that he will be there for a long time and the Liverpool captain. Does he see himself as a midfielder now, stepping in and getting on the ball? Would he be willing to do that role and just stand out there?
I've watched an interview the other day where he said, I really enjoy playing in midfield now. Like, that feels like my next step. And I found it quite strange because he still plays right back for Liverpool. And so when I looked at Amorim, and I was like, if you ask Trent to go play as a right-sided midfielder, and like I said, I see Amorim's wing-backs, wide midfielders, play like traditional right, like an RM. That is an RM
Yeah,
on
it's really
FM.
good. Yeah.
They stay really wide. They'll hold the width so the pitch feels stretched, and they'll rely on the two centre-backs behind them to cover the wide areas. They're not going to do that much defending. But then they also have the wingers in front of them that are also going to take up all the space out wide. So effectively, you're asking Trent to occupy that middle third of the pitch and play passes, which a lot of people will say that's what he's done. He doesn't do that anymore. He comes inside, and so
he wants to do more.
Yeah,
doesn't he?
yeah, and I think that like desire for him to be like almost a metronome in midfield in Amorim's system doesn't work. I actually think Szoboszlai is really suited to that right-sided midfield position. He did it. He used to do it for Hungary a long while ago, where he played really wide and just stretched the pitch, and he'd just get up and down. Amorim will have to tinker something though, because Trent's the most important player, in my opinion, to make this system work.
Because again, the top line of it is, can Trent play that position? Of course he can. There's been those comparisons with Beckham, absolutely. Does he want to? Is he going to get annoyed doing that? That's a different conversation. Marcus Edwards, who plays on the right side of a front three for Sporting, in terms of what you want from Salah and what Salah would probably enjoy doing, this is a lovely fit as well. Because those two, well, actually, they're very different, but in particular on the right-hand side, Marcus Edwards is a similar profile to Salah in many ways. Kind of wing. Is he a winger? Is he a forward? But he starts in that half space and then will go out from there, which works again with Trent, who's not going to bomb on and be that frimpong that you've seen with Alonso. So it works from that point of view. And in midfield, you have Hjulmund and Morita. Morita's a bit more like a McAllister. Endo would be more like a Hjulmund. And then in the back line, you've got two centre-backs out wide that are very, very impressive in terms of their physical abilities. And I think, Konate on that right side would work. I think,
That's
again,
my thing. The other side.
It's the left-hand side. So I was going to get to... I think there's two players that you could really have your eye on if you are Amorim and Liverpool generally, in terms of going and getting those players if you can afford them. One would be Diomande, I think, on that left-hand side. Joe Gomez has been all over the place this year. I mean, positionally, I think he's had a good season. But I think you want your out-and-out guy on that left-hand side if you're going to play this 3-4-3, which Amorim looks like he would inevitably bring in. The other would be Gyökeres, who... we've both seen in the flesh back in the Coventry days.
Adore this guy.
He's gone
so
to
good.
He's gone to another level this year. Look, Darwin Núñez is fun and he's been brilliant. But do you think those are the two that he would want to bring in, or is it someone like Pedro Gonçalves, who's a bit more of a playmaker? You've got players like Szoboszlai who could play in that role. Diaz could play in that similar role where he drops in a little bit deeper, but probably not exactly the same as Gonçalves.
The problem they've got is they've got 5 forwards already, 6 actually. So you've got Gakpo, Núñez, Jota, Salah, Diaz, and I'm missing one. Or it may actually just be 5.
Yeah. Or even, if you want, Harvey Elliott could sometimes play.
Yeah, and I don't personally feel
Dan's.
like he's a player.
Hey, sorry.
But I look at Gyökeres and I go, yes, he would complete any team in the world because of how good he is. But if you've got 5 attackers, one of those has to go to bring him in.
Yep.
Especially if you're playing this front three, because where Pedro Gonçalves plays, he sometimes drops in as like a 10. So like you might end up playing Szoboszlai or Harvey Elliott on that side because the demand on that winger isn't like a Diaz where you've got to stretch the pitch.
Totally.
So I think there's a few elements there where Amorim will look to change the area. Central midfield, McAllister will need someone next to him, and I don't think Endo was ever the long-term plan. And I think in Amorim's system, both his 2 central midfielders can play. And I don't really... I think Endo's been brilliant, but he's not the midfielder that is like McAllister. You need both that can distribute the ball. So I think I know you said at the start, like, you think that is the most transferable. Honestly, maybe it's my Alonso bias. Every time I look at Bayer Leverkusen, I go, that for me, I feel like Liverpool have those profiles already.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I think this fits better. I think whoever comes in, that first season needs to be a write-off of sorts, because I just think the shoes to fill are just enormous. So I think the important thing, if you're Liverpool, if he can get that connection with the fans, then he'll get that good grace, which over the years Liverpool have always been very good with. And then if that happens, then it's one where can you feel good about Liverpool by the second half of next season? And because then you go into the next season, 25-26, and that's when you want to be springboarding into challenging once again, because it's a good squad and it's a young squad.
I was on that age. It's so funny you said young. I look at the Sporting squad and the average age is 25.6, and I think the Liverpool squad is slightly older because like your core players, your Van Dijk, your Salah, Alisson. they're actually getting on a little bit. And so I wonder whether age comes into this, because Amorim's still really young, and I think Alonso's done really well at Leverkusen because of the general age of the squad, and I think Amorim's doing the same. So I wonder how you adjust as a coach or a manager to dealing with an older squad that's won everything, that might actually be on a quote-unquote decline.
Yeah. I think, Joe, when it comes to those key players, the goalkeeping position, that they want to play out and they will bait the press a lot of the time, but they also are ready to play those long passes. Coates does that, ex-Liverpool, of course, as well. So Van Dijk, in terms of profile of those older dudes, right? You've got Virgil van Dijk, who are, or players. Virgil van Dijk will be a quarterback there, and I think he'll really enjoy that. So I think if you're enjoying your football, enjoying the role and affecting the game, I think that will work for him. And I think the role for Salah would work similarly well. So I think as long as, with these older players, as long as they're important, then it will work. Long term, that's the next problem. Because say you're going to play 5 years of this style of football, you're going to have to replace Van Dijk and you're going to have to replace Salah. And they're both very, very crucial areas of the pitch. So it's going to be difficult. Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, new manager, new vibes. Weirdly, we said this before, but I think I wanted Klopp to win everything this season, obviously. But it petering out actually might be better for the soul. Because
really?
I never wanted him to go on. I still don't, obviously.
Yeah.
But it sort of, and Liverpool fans will hate me for this, but it not ending on a quadruple almost feels like, oh, well, maybe it was meant to end this way.
Yeah.
So a new guy comes in, fresh blood, and I like Amorim. I really like his profile, and I'm generally quite excited for next season.